I'd like to call to order the Regional Planning Commission public hearing for Thursday, September the 1st, 2022. It is now 6:30, and as customary, we'll lead off the meeting. I'd like to ask Mr. Servon, he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. So all stand. Thank you all and welcome tonight. And as customary, when we start a meeting, I ask if you have a phone or any kind of electronic device that you either turn it off or put it on vibrate so it won't interrupt us. I know you've all been to meetings where you hear phones going off. So Sarah, I'll come to you now for a roll call and determination of quorum.
Mr. Peterman?
Here.
Mr. Servon?
Here.
Mrs. Karcher?
Here.
Mr. Galvry?
Here.
Mr. Mills?
Here.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Davis?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Jester?
Here.
So you have 7 present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. You have before you tonight the agenda. On the first one on the agenda, the C-22-02 TPE DE KE 73 LLC has been removed from the agenda and will not be heard tonight. So I will ask now my fellow commissioners that with the agenda change, I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Sarah, call the commission.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Servon?
Yes.
Mrs. Karcher?
Yes.
Mr. Galvry?
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
So you have 7 yeas in favor of approving tonight's agenda as amended.
Thank you very much. Now we'll come right back to you, Sarah, for the introduction and public hearing instructions.
Thank you. This public hearing is being conducted for the purpose of giving the citizens of the county the opportunity to present testimony on the applications before the commission. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. All statements are to be made from the podium at the front of the room. All testimony given shall be sworn or affirmed. For the record, please give your name and address. Copies of any written statements or exhibits used during the hearing should be presented for identification and inclusion in the record. The record will remain open for 2 business days following tonight's hearing. For the applications before the commission, the chairman will introduce the application. Then the applicant or representative will be given 15 minutes to present the application. Following that, those in favor of the application will be allotted 5 minutes each to speak. Then those opposed to the application will be allotted 5 minutes each to speak. When everyone has had an opportunity to give testimony, the hearing on the application will be closed. No decision will be made by the commission tonight. The commission will hold a public business meeting next Thursday, September 8th, at 6:30 p.m., at which time it will make a decision on the applications heard tonight. All information of record will be considered, and a common vote of 4 members of the commission is required to make a decision. Anyone may attend the business meeting, but no new testimony will be received. The public notice of this hearing was published on August 12th, 2022 in the Delaware State News. And the levy court will hear these applications on Tuesday, September 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m., unless tabled by the commission or withdrawn prior to the levy court hearing. The levy court also meets in this room. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And before we get into tonight's meeting, I'm going to get Mark, our IT specialist. We have a new tool up here at the podium. He's going to explain how it works and what you're expected and possibly you can do with it. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we've installed inside the front right podium, we have an annotation monitor for those who are presenting to us with a PowerPoint slide, or if you would want to comment on pictures that you may see throughout the presentation in the evening. You can use the annotation monitor to point or to draw to help the board see what you're illustrating. I'll be here to help and assist you if you have any troubles using the monitor, and it's to the front right podium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we all know we have to adopt new ways, so if you do have problems tonight, Mark will be more than happy. He helps me all the time, keeps me straight. So now we're going to get into our public hearing. First one tonight on our public hearing is application entitled CS22-04, American Holly Solar. Applicant is American Holly Solar Farm, LLC, care of Yannick Tam, 6940 Columbia Gateway, Suite 400, Columbia, Maryland, 214046. Owner is Robert Parnell, P.O. Box 3, Felton, Delaware, 19943. Engineer is Century Engineering, LLC, care of Alex Schmidt, P.E., 550 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware, 19901. Comprehensive plan designation is low-density residential. Present zoning district is AC, agriculture conservation. Relation to gross zone is outside. Present use is agriculture and residential. Proposed use is same with a public utility, the solar generating facility. Conditional use area. The conditional use area consists of approximately 25.58 fenced acres, a solar array spanning approximately 6.5 acres. Levy Court District is 6 Mr. Howell. School District is Lake Forest. Fire District is Felton, Station 48. Area and location is 151.08 plus or minus acres. Conditional use area 25.58 plus or minus acres. Located on the south side of Burnite Mill Road, approximately 3252 feet east of Black Swamp Road, and approximately 1,288 feet west of Hopkins Cemetery, west of Felton. Is there someone here to represent this? Please come to the mic so you can be sworn in, give your address, and be sworn in and name.
Yes, I'm Yannick Tam, representing EDF Renewables. Yeah, is that better?
Better.
Great.
Address, please. Your address.
Oh, my address? I guess Columbia Gateway Drive. Sorry.
Columbia, Maryland? That works for me.
6940 Columbia Gateway Drive, Maryland.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you.
You must have so many addresses you can't remember where you're coming from.
I was
tonight.
about to give you my home address. So.
Understood. Well, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So how do I get the PowerPoint slide up? Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for having us today. My name is Yannick Tam. I represent EDF Renewables. I'm a manager of project development. I'm also here with Jeff Matcheron and Peter Bay, who are also on the project development team at EDF Renewables. And we're also here with Dave Shapley, who's the VP of Innovation and Strategic Initiatives at Delaware Electric Cooperative. He'll talk a little bit about EDF's partnership with Delaware Electric for these three projects. And then finally, Frank Miller, who's a senior civil designer at Century Engineering, just right across the street from here. So our intention with the presentation is just to give a brief introduction into who we are as EDF, our partnership with Delaware Electric, and some general solar notes, and then jump into the specifics of each project, starting with, of course, American Holly. So who is EDF Renewables North America? We're a turnkey developer, financier, O&M, and EPC company for all things renewable, so wind, solar, storage, charging ports, pretty much everything. And we're broken up into 4 different business units, as you can see here. From the left, it's grid scale power. That's the large scale, utility scale projects that are, hundreds or even thousands of acres of land of, again, solar, wind, storage. We here represent the distribution scale power group, and the main difference there is that we develop smaller scale projects where we site projects mainly solar, locally to meet the local demand in that area. So we typically range from 2 to 30-ish megawatts in size, which is, 20 to 50-ish acres. But we'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. And then we also have an asset optimization group where we do some of the operations and maintenance of these projects. A little bit of market experience. We have 35 plus years of experience at the DSP level. Over 1,400 megawatts of projects installed to date, over 2,500 installations. And you can see that we have a good footprint throughout the country. We have relatively significant footprint in the Mid-Atlantic as well, namely, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware. We actually have 2 projects in later stages of development right now going on in Sussex County as well. But these are the 3 projects that we're working with Delaware Electric in Kent County that we'll present today. Now I'd like to invite Dave from Delaware Electric to talk about our partnership and a little bit about the importance of these projects to DEC.
Appreciate you, Yannick. Evening, everyone. My name is David Shapley. I'm a Vice President of Innovation Strategic Initiatives with Delaware Electric Co-op. Do you need my address?
You need your name and your address, like you said.
P.O. Box 600, Greenwood, Delaware, 19950.
Sir, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed.
Okay. So these 3 projects that we're working on, it's part of a 4 solar projects we're working with EDF. DEC and EDF had entered into a power purchase agreement with DEC for the power that's generated. DEC also holds an option to purchase these projects outright if we so desire. DEC is a non-for-profit organization owned by the members it serves, and we're very supportive of the local community. We serve over 108,000 meters in Kent and Sussex County. These projects are specifically sized to connect to our distribution system and serve the customer load in that area, reduce the electricity rates for the members. These projects generate electricity in communities where power is consumed and thereby reduces the need for long transmission lines. So all these projects are sized to be specific to fit within a substation load profile. They provide clean, renewable power close to the end users. They improve the resiliency of the local distribution grid and can deliver power at all and lower cost to the end user. DEC is also dedicated to meet our RPS renewable portfolio standards of 10% by the year 2035. Thank you.
I just interrupt you a minute. I guess we're only going to talk about one project at a time as you come up in one engineering project. And remember,
Correct.
You only have 15 minutes per project to go through what the specifics are of that project.
Correct,
As
yeah.
in beginning talk, so.
If it's all right with you all, we can provide an introduction, and then after that, the projects will be way shorter.
Okay.
Does that
Go
work?
ahead with your first project, I
Thank
guess.
you. So these are the 3 project locations in West Kent. We can skip over this. Again, just want to reiterate distributed scale projects here. They're sited locally. They can provide electricity at low cost because it offsets the need for expensive transmission upgrades. And the power, the green, pollution-free electricity is consumed locally. And it uses tens of acres as opposed to hundreds and thousands. Generally, this is equal. This is for all 3 of the projects, but American Holly as well. This is the typical equipment that we use. There's a racking system that typically just H piles, as you can see in number 1 here, with a torque tube. So these are single axis trackers. So the solar panels will track the path of the sun throughout the day to maximize electricity production. Number 2 is just a typical polysilicon panel that we use. 3 would be the string inverters that converts the power from DC into AC, and AC is what is used on the distribution system. And that is located on the back of the racking systems that you can see in number 1. Number 4 is just a transformer to step up the power. This is a typical transformer that you could see throughout the city next to commercial buildings or such. And then number 5 is the interconnection equipment, which are just a series of 5 utility poles for safety and metering equipment that look just like the distribution lines that are along the street. And then we like to show this because just to give you a sense of what the typical project fences that we use. We don't use a chain link fence that has more of an industrial feel. We typically like to use the fixed, not agricultural style fence, which is just cedar posts with mesh wiring in between them, which have 6-inch gaps that allow for the passage of small wildlife and little critters. So it fits in nicely with the character of the landscape. Typical construction timeline for all three of these projects, American Holly included, is about 6 to 8 months, all the way from site prep to foundation work, all the way to commissioning and testing for 1 or 2 months before the power gets put onto the grid. And then one last point before jumping into the project specifics is that solar is passive use of land. It doesn't require much drain on the local infrastructure, on Kent County's infrastructure, such as sewage, water, fire, emergency, anything like that. It pretty much just generates electricity during its operation nice and quietly throughout its 25 to 35-year life. All right, so now we can jump into the specifics of the first project, American Holly Solar Farm, which is in the Agricultural Conservation Zoning District, just east of Felton.
I believe that would be west.
Correct, west of Felton, thank you. And this is just a brief project overview. It's a 4-megawatt AC project, about 26 acres in size in the fence area off of Burnite Mill Road in Felton, Delaware. And like I said, this connects directly to the Delaware Electric Co-op's distribution lines along the street at the top, with those 5 utility poles that I kind of pointed out earlier. And the project schedule is scheduled to start construction, assuming approval, on Q1 or Q2 of 2023, and then with a commercial operation date by the end of that same year, 2023. Now, if we focus our attention to the image on the right, that's the conceptual plan. The orange are the solar modules. The blue is that fixed, not ag style fence, at least 7 feet tall, for security purposes. And then the green along the frontage of the project is a landscape buffer that we're proposing to plant in areas where there isn't already existing vegetation that exists. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And you can see in white the access drive that provides access from Burnite Mill Road to the project. We also hired, Century. We were working with Century Engineering to do a lot of the civil work and the site work and the environmental work. So they had their certified wetland scientists go out and do a wetland delineation, which you can see in the image on the left here. Pretty much the entire forested area in the back is located in wetlands, as well as these farm ponds at the back. So, even though the conditional use permit technically only requires a setback of 25 feet, we understand, and there's a solar ordinance in place, and we would like to honor that. And so we are set back 100 feet from all of the wetlands, so there's going to be no disturbance to any wetlands. We like to show this to show kind of the environmental benefits of the project. So the green electricity, that is pollution-free electricity that is generated from this project, is equivalent to about 6,573 metric tons of carbon dioxide that would have been emitted from traditional electricity generation sources. So there's a tremendous environmental benefit to these projects. And so what is that equivalent to? About 1,200 homes' electricity consumption, or the carbon sequestered by almost 8,000 acres of U.S. forests annually. So with this application, we have applied for 3 waivers, the first of which is a waiver to provide a sidewalk along our arterial roadway frontage of the property. And the reason for this waiver request is that, first of all, there's no existing sidewalk along Burnite Mill Road, and this is an agricultural area, not much foot traffic. And the second reasoning would be that the project won't generate any additional foot traffic. We anticipate 2 visits per year for mowing of the grass underneath the modules, and maybe some occasional other maintenance visits by staff, but that's it. So waiver request 2 would be the requirement to provide 1 tree per 3,000 square feet of site area for non-residential development. And the primary reason for this is that, we're developing this project on open field, ag field, without cutting down any trees at all. We are going to maintain 68 acres of forest that are already on the property. Even so, we're still proposing to plant 192 trees that are located in the green vegetated buffer along the front. And then the remainder will be nice and screened from the existing vegetation, which I'll talk about in the next slide. Another reason would be to, the landowner has an intention to continue farming the front half of his property. So the more trees we plant, that takes away agricultural space for him to use. And I've already touched on the emissions. And then the last point is the excessive financial burden that it could cause. A lot of these, if it's, the utility scale projects, the really large ones, can take advantage of economies of scale and can accommodate a lot of the expensive screening requirements. But these smaller projects that provide low-cost power to the community, that would be economically challenging for the project to screen, for example, 360 degrees around the project. And the second point there is that trees and solar generally aren't necessarily the most symbiotic thing, just for the simple reason that, trees create shade, and shade will reduce the electricity production of the project, also challenging the economics. And then the third waiver is the requirement to provide visual and sound screening when abutting a residential use. We are still proposing screening, but we like to propose smart screening, right, in areas where there isn't already existing vegetation. So again, that's along the front. But we've also received comment from the staff and recommendation from the staff to screen the eastern portion. Where it abuts residents. So we are going to propose, in addition to everything in green, we're proposing to screen adjacent to this residential parcel down here on the eastern boundary, where that would screen a view of this residence. We are not proposing at this stage to screen above that due to no residences being on that property, just open field and forest land there. And then finally, what happens at the end of the project? The project is decommissioned and removed at the end of his 25 to 35 year life, and may be returned to its previous use, agricultural use. And this decommissioning cost is completely paid for by the project and not the county, not the landowner. In fact, we have an agreement within the option to lease with the landowner to remove the equipment at the end of the project life. And then finally, as required by the solar ordinance as well, we plan to develop a decommissioning plan and provide financial assurance prior to final site plan approval of the project. So with that, thank you for your time. And any questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
I assume that the owner is keeping ownership and this is a lease for the solar, correct?
That is correct, yep.
Yeah,
We're currently under an option to lease, and then once the development continues, we enter into a lease agreement over a period of 25 to 35 years, where we lease the acreage of the project.
Yeah, because the owner, we kind of support that as the owner would keep it so it could go back into farming or something like that, because some of these areas are going to be little isolated areas that aren't developed when other things around them in the next 25 or 35 years could be developed. So that's why we wanted to know that.
Absolutely, yep.
So I'm going to open up to the other commissioners. I think Denise has a question for you.
Yes.
Well, that was my one question. I was going to try to make it easy and say, is this true of all three, or are they all being leased, just to shorten things, but that's okay.
That's correct.
Just kind of curious, how is the site on the piece of land chosen? I mean, is it purposely been put back for aesthetic reasons, or is there really a solar reason?
Yeah, there's multiple reasons for that. One is aesthetic. Being set back further. There will be less of a view shed, particularly if the landowner continues to farm the front half of the property during the crop season, especially if it's corn. That'll create a nice visual buffer. The second reason is also just conversation working with the landowner who wants to continue to farm the front half of the property. So we worked with them and we accommodated that. Yes.
Also, now I'm thinking about what it looks like. The farmer won't get as many mosquitoes because the solar farms will be dealing with them with the water back there. But that I'm thinking of the mosquito bites I got today. I'm just, other than asking about the lease, my only other it's a comment and not a question, and is that I'm really happy to see that this is going to be used locally. I would hope, I'm going to say this publicly, I hope that this discussion of these 3 projects makes the papers so that people see that things are being done locally. So I'm really happy to see that.
Yeah, and it's really good like you did it, because I know the farmer well, and he has a large irrigation system that he can still use like half of it for the irrigation, and it won't disturb it, and how you've kept it straight across east to west.
Absolutely, that was the intention, to continue
good project.
Use of the irrigation system. Yep.
I'll open it up to any other commissioners have any questions. Mr. Gervais?
Yes, I do. Actually, this will probably be the same question for all 3, so maybe we can just get it out of the way now. When I was looking through the agency comments, I know that DNREC has a tendency to just boilerplate this thing every time. It's almost the same language. However, there are a few issues with their language that I am interested in your response to. One has to do with the artificial lighting and the impact that has on wildlife. And I was wondering what you're doing in terms of direct or indirect lighting, motion detectors, that sort of thing, to minimize the light output from this facility during evening hours.
Yes.
That's one question. I'll just hit you with all 3 of them, then you can answer. The other one has to do with security fences. They do recommend, and I think you alluded to the fact that you were going to use a certain type of fence with stranding, and I don't know if that would be considered a deer fence or not. That's one of the things that they recommended, having it high enough where the deer wouldn't go over the top, but wide enough in between the strands without barbed wire where other critters could move freely in and out and use that habitat. And the last item that I thought they mentioned, which was a good point, was to utilize this space in terms of the ground cover that you plant and the indigenous plants that you intend to use, is to include a mix that is beneficial for pollinators. So those were the 3 things that I think the DNREC does do on a boilerplate fashion, but I do think it's worth considering.
Right. So to address the light question first, there will not be any light emitted. We don't have any lights associated with this project. And in terms of indirect light, the solar panels are designed to absorb sunlight and generate electricity from that rather than reflect it. So that is also a nice feature of like indirect light. The second question was about fencing. So yeah, we typically use that fixed, not ag style fence. To electrical code, it has to be at least 7 feet tall. So that is relatively tall for deer. We've had conversations with some of our operations folks in the past, and they have rarely seen deer inside the project fence at 7 feet tall. But it hasn't been a problem, because if they can jump into it, they can also jump out of it. So we haven't seen any issues with damage or anything like that from deer getting in or trapped. And then the final question was about pollinators. So we typically try to avoid pollinators as much as possible. Generally speaking, they take a little bit longer to grow in the ground, and that can create stormwater issues at the very early onset of the project. We typically like to use just a seed mix that's used by the Department of Transportation, for example, that catches very well and early on, and is very easy to maintain, rather than the pollinators, which can require more time to catch as well as more maintenance going forward to ensure that it doesn't die.
Thank you.
I thank you very much on that. Do you have another question, Denise?
I just wanted to know what this screening, smart screening,
Yes.
what is that?
Well, it's just what we call basically proposing screening in areas where there isn't already existing vegetation. So the intention is just not to plant trees to screen other trees, essentially. That's kind of what we are naming smart screening. Yeah. No. The screening that we're proposing is the evergreens as required by the solar ordinance.
I think she has one more question. I know we're going over time, but we're going to look at this over 3 projects. So.
Yep.
I have a question because of what was asked about pollinators. One of your pictures showed all these beautiful field with purple flowers. So those, I would assume, would be pollinators. So is that is that out of the question?
For these specific projects, I believe it would be, just because the economics are tight, and the intention of these are to provide the low-cost electricity to the community. The photo does include I believe, some pollinators. I believe that is from a project up in Michigan that we have done in the past. But yeah.
Does any other commissioners, does Mr. Davis have any questions, Mark, while he's online?
No.
Very good. Anybody else here? I do have one. I've been doing a lot of research on this and reading. I know up in Lancaster County, up in Pennsylvania, they actually have formed sheep associations where they're leasing sheep out to these areas and all. Do you have any solar farms that you do animal control of vegetation?
Our DSP group, I don't believe does. Our distributed solutions group, the smaller scale projects, I believe there's one at the utility scale that our parent company does. I want to say it's in either upstate New York or in Canada. But it's something that's relatively new to the industry as well, and a little bit more difficult to manage. It's not as uniform, of course, right, as mowing.
Well, I understand that, and we've had some discussion here where some of the farmers are negative against solar farms. And, when they're able to make more income by forming associations with these solar farms, there might be a better, more productive talk between us and them as these things come up more all the time. Well, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone here else that would like to speak in favor of this project? Third and final call. Is there anybody else here in favor of this project? If not, we'll go to the negative. Is there anyone here opposed for this project and would like to speak? This lady over here first, ma'am. She had her hand up first. I'm sorry. Now go ahead. Give us your name and your address, and you can be either sworn or affirmed.
Juanita Gary Melling, 5607 Hopkins Cemetery Road, Felton, Delaware, and my property joins the property in question.
Hang on a second. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
And it's not so much that I'm opposed, I have concerns. One of my first questions, and hopefully they've already researched that, is this farm under farm preservation, and is it allowed to have commercial development on it? Because I know the former owner had put a lot of his farms into farm preservation, so that was one of my questions. Another one was the magnetic field. I know magnetic fields at some of these big electric places have caused cancer and other health issues for the people and the animals that live around it. I plan on living there till I die, and hopefully that's quite a few more years. I have horses and other livestock that are in the field that butts up with the property in question. I talked with Mr. Tam on the phone and voiced some of my concerns, and I will thank him, and he's already addressed one of them. And when he stated that there was a buffer of trees between that property and my property, and I let him know those trees were mine. So that his company wasn't really doing anything for me, and it appears that they have addressed that and are going to add some trees on their side of the property. Again, back to the magnetic field, is the electricity they're generating going to go out on high wires? Is that going to be something that's constructed? Is it going underground? You know, how are they going to transmit it?
Let's address one question at a time. Sarah, you can address the question about zoning. The parcel is what zoning, as I read earlier?
It's
And I'm
not,
sorry, I'm hard hearing. If you could speak up.
the property is not in farmland preservation. If it were,
Okay.
solar would not be permitted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in AC, is what it is. Now, the other one about the magnetic, I guess we'll have to call somebody back up and give your name again when you come up. You don't have to be anything else. Just give your name so we know who you are.
Okay, it's David Shapley, Vice President, Innovation Strategic Initiatives. I'm a licensed engineer for the state of Delaware. So as far as the EMF concern is, there is none. The solar panels take the sun and through a chemical reaction creates a DC voltage. And then it goes to a transformer, kind of like the transformer that serves your house, okay? So the EMF is very, very minimal. You have more EMF from a microwave in your house than you do from the transformer outside. And the intent is to take the electricity generated and bring it out on overhead lines to connect to the overhead lines on that road.
Onto Burnite Mill Road.
Yes, because there's already overhead lines right there. Okay.
Okay. And another concern I had, and I think it was addressed, but like I said, I couldn't hear everything that was said, is noise and light. Because where my property joins that property is what I call my little piece of heaven. It's my horse barn, it's my horses, it's where I take the dogs walking. And I went out the other night at 11:30, it was dead silent. Not a light to be seen except for the stars. And my concern is my quality of life is going to be affected by that.
I think he can answer that right away.
Yes, as far as noise, the solar panels make absolutely no noise at all. You only have noise from the transformer as it's energized, which is a low hum, similar to the transformer that serves your property.
This low hum 24 hours a day?
Yes, yes, the very low hum. There are requirements by ANSI that states the transformers can't be above a certain decibel level, and all of our transformers meet that requirement as set forth by the national standard.
Well, and I understand
Yeah.
you're meeting a requirement, but that's not telling me what the noise level would be.
It's a slow hum. Like if you go outside to where your transformer is, you hear that hum. That's
Do you have a decibel level that you think it runs at?
Not off the top of my head. I would have to look at the standard.
If you could supply that this week to Sarah, so we could get these answers out, I would like that supplied about how much noise it does make.
Okay, I can try to look it up when I sit back down. Okay.
Thank you very much. Is that, Ms. Melling, does that take care of it?
What's it going to do to my property value? I mean, I plan on having it until I die, and then my kids and my grandkids, because as anybody in Delaware knows, land in Delaware is getting scarce.
Are you going to answer, what are you going to talk on?
Yannick Tam, on the noise and the property value, I can do both.
Okay, make it quick then.
First of all, noise, we liken it to the humming of a refrigerator or something for the transformer, maybe an AC unit, very small, and that's centrally located in the site, so noise should not be an issue. The inverters make a very small amount of noise as well, but it's at a whisper level, and again, shouldn't be an issue at your property line.
There's a sound level right there.
Yeah, up to 60 decibels at max volume. But again, that's during the daytime when it's generating electricity. At nighttime, there's no sun, so it won't make a
I
noise.
hear during the day, too.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
In terms of property value, yeah, that's been a well-studied field as well, and SEIA, Solar Energy Association is a good resource for the fact that it does not decrease property value, and we're happy to share any resources and research papers with you if that's something that you'd like.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Melling. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next lady that stood up, come up, give us your name, your address, and be either sworn or affirmed.
Hi, Tricia Hurd Nash, 3652 Big Woods Road, Smyrna, Delaware, 19977.
You swear or
me now?
affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I don't know that I am for or opposed to this project. I'm opposed to a couple of things that I heard. The waivers, I don't feel that there should be waivers granted for these projects from the county. I think that, as you have heard, property owners with adjacent properties are concerned. One of the comments that was made was that they would buffer around one of the residential areas that is there now, but not further up the line. My concern is for the person that owns that property now. What if they do want to further develop their property? They shouldn't have expense because the solar company didn't have to follow procedure and didn't have to put a buffer in at that time. The other comment is they're saying that trees are not conducive to solar production, which I understand, and that the farmer doesn't want to put the trees in because it will hinder his crop production. Well, if the farmer is worried about his crop production, he shouldn't be selling to solar. He should be producing crops. So that's not a legitimate concern either. I am opposed to the waivers. I'm not opposed to the sidewalk waiver. I don't know why the county does that. I know that that's a thing that they request. I think that they should be given that waiver. The buffers, I'm opposed to giving waivers on those buffers. I think those buffers need to be there to protect adjacent property owners. I do think these projects are going to negatively impact property values for adjacent property owners, and I do think they disturb the character of the areas that they're being put in when they're in ag conservation and ag residential districts, all of them. But I'm not going to stand up here every time you present a project tonight and say that, so I'm saying it once. I hope that you all understand.
I think we know you well enough to know what you're going to say anyway,
it.
so
I'm
that's
not
very
I'm
good.
not doing it, but those specific things that I heard in this project, which if they're presenting all three, I'm going to assume that similar things will come up, and I am here one time to say,
So
I
you're
am
taking from
opposed.
the engineer there that you're going to speak for all three at one time.
no, I'm not, well, yeah, if you're going to ask for waivers on all three properties, I'm going to stand up here and say, I'm opposed to the waivers. They're there for a reason. They're there to protect adjacent property owners. The line about the farmer doesn't want to hinder his crop production doesn't wash out for me. He wouldn't be putting in solar if he was worried about crop production. So he needs to put the buffer zone in. That's it. And I know you're for the supplemental income. I agree, but the buffers are there for a reason.
Thank you, Mrs. Nash. We always appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here would like to speak against this project? Anybody else would like to speak? Sir, come to the mic, give us your name and your address. You can either be sworn or affirmed.
Name's Jerome Jennifer. My address is 272 Greenhead Lane. I'm right behind the proposed project.
Sir, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah, I swear.
Thank you.
Pull the mic up, sir, close to you so we can hear you.
The couple of questions I have on the property, the solar panels is real huge. Are we going to be generate waste product on the solar panels once they go bad, or are they generated good waste or bad waste?
Yeah, I think we've been through this before with other, and you might have the same answer, where they're recycled. They actually are sold to second and third world nations for their use because they're no longer used for us. But I'm not trying to give you your spokesman, but if you'd like to compare and address it, go ahead.
Yeah.
That is correct. There's a recyclable value at the end of it, the project life of these modules. So as you correctly stated, they can be sold to developing nations. There's also salvage value for the raw materials beyond just the modules. So the steel, for example, for the racking system is steel that can be recycled, and the aluminum around the frames. So yes, there's a market that already exists and is only growing to recycle and salvage the products.
Thank you very much. Sir, does that answer your question on that?
Yes.
Is that all you have?
I just want one other question.
Come back to the mic so we can hear you.
One other question I have, when you store this energy, where does energy stored? Are they stored in batteries?
All right, yeah, so we're not proposing any storage for this project at the time. So it's just a solar project. It is generating electricity in real time that is consumed in real time by the end user. Nothing is stored.
Thank you again. Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak against this project? Come up and give us your name and address, and you can be either sworn or affirmed.
Yeah, my name is John Nichols. I live at 970 Winnow Drive, Clayton, Delaware. Native Delawarean.
Mr. Nichols, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
So help me God.
Thank you.
My comment this evening pertains to all of the proposed projects. They all should be tabled. The ordinances as they exist and the proposed ordinances, and I apologize, I think they're still on the agenda this evening. You haven't removed them from the agenda, the discussion of the ordinances. Is that accurate?
Yes, they're at the end of the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. The ordinances as in existence and as proposed are too weak. None of these projects should be approved as conditional use. They're industrial power plants. If you approve these, you're citing industrial power plants in ag-land areas. They don't belong in ag-land areas, and they will, according to some studies, affect property values. How much remains unknown. But there are multiple issues that I'll talk about at greater length when we talk about the proposed ordinances. Suffice it to say, with respect to this project, the developer says they have 1,400 megawatts of generation. If it were all solar, maybe they're getting 20% capacity out of it because the sun sets every day, but they also said they do wind, so maybe they're doing a little bit better than that. But that's encompassing 1,400 megawatts on thousands of acres. Now, in Dover, we have the combined cycle natural gas facility, which I think is nameplate 325 megawatts. It's dispatched 88% of the time on about 100 acres. Now, again, let me say it, 1,400 megawatts on thousands of acres. It's a waste of space. I've said this multiple times. I'm going to continue to say it until someone starts to listen. The capacity factor is very low. All of it has to be tended, that's the terminology that they use in the industry, with reliable generation. In Delaware, that means natural gas. 92% of the electricity that's generated in Delaware, according to the the EIA. According to the EIA, 92% is generated by natural gas. While the co-op can get this electricity temporarily when it's available, when it's not available, when it's snow covered or the days are cloudy and the capacity is less, they better be ready and able to dispatch reliable generation. So in essence, we end up paying twice. Once for the unreliable intermittent solar, and then again for the reliable natural gas in Delaware. So I'm opposed to it. It makes no sense. I'm glad there's engineers in the room. They can contradict me if they choose. But these are facts. What drives these projects? It's not the sun. It's subsidies. 70% of these projects are underwritten by subsidies. If without the subsidies, they don't go forward. I suggest that you do some research on it. You table them until the ordinances are improved, and you can look into some of the other issues that I'll discuss later. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to respond.
No, we're just dealing with this project in itself. Do you have any comments against it, or just the broad spectrum of what you're trying to say to us?
No, I know I'm opposed to it because, let me go into my status as a Delaware co-op customer. My electricity consumption was basically the same last month. It went up, my delivery charges went up $10. I believe that it has something to do with the fact that DMAC customers and co-op customers and Delmarva Power customers are now paying, over the next 5 years, $100 million to keep the last remaining coal-fired generator, which I think is around 400 megawatts. I might be wrong there. The last remaining coal-fired generator in Millsboro. They weren't getting sufficient dispatch. They weren't getting cleared in pricing because of, at the time, low natural gas prices. But it's more than that. Wind is displacing it. Wind power coming in at night, which can bid into the grid at zero because of the production tax credit, means that coal doesn't get dispatched. So now we're paying $100 million. I oppose
Sir,
it. Yes.
I'm not going to interrupt you, but I'm going to say that we're talking about this project.
No.
We're not working on a history lesson
all
or
of these
anything
projects,
like that.
excuse me, all of these projects cumulatively, this one being just one small project, add to the dilemma. It's just going to get worse as the penetration increases. And according to the proposed ordinance, we're going to sacrifice 1,400 acres of farmland for almost no addition to capacity. So yes, I'm opposed to this project and every other one like it, and I suggest that you table it until you review more closely the deficiencies in the proposed ordinance, which I'll speak about later.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Any questions? Nobody has any questions? Thank you, sir.
No?
Anyone else here opposed to this project and would like to speak? Anyone else here opposed? If not, we'll take this project up next week at our business meeting. Next on the agenda tonight is application entitled CS-22-05 Ladybug Solar. Applicant is Ladybug Solar Farm LLC, care of Jeff Macaran, 6940 Columbia Gateway, Suite 400, Columbia, Maryland, 21046. Owner is Jason and Caroline Evans, 2900 Sudlersville Road, Clayton, Delaware, 19938. Engineer is Century Engineering, care of Alexander E. Schmidt, P.E., 550 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware, 19901. Comprehensive plan map designation is low density residential. Present zoning district is AR, agriculture residential. Relation to the gross zone is outside. Present use is agriculture and residential. Proposed use is the same with a public utility, solar energy generating facility. Conditional use area. The conditional use area consists of approximately 24.17 fenced acres containing a solar array spanning approximately 6.02 acres. Levy Court District is Mr. Howe. School District is Smyrna. Fire District is Hartley, Station 51. Area and location, 148.65 plus or minus total acres. Conditional use area, 24.17 acres, located on the south side of Sudlersville Road, approximately 2,886 feet east of Downs Chapel Road, and approximately 3,255 feet west of Owl's Nest Road, west of Kenton. I see there's someone at the mic to represent this project, so please give us your name and address and be sworn in or affirmed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Matron with EDF Renewables. Address is 6940 Columbia Gateway Drive, Columbia, Maryland. I will be the lead developer on the Ladybug Solar Project.
Hang on, sir.
Hold on, you gotta be.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed.
All right, thank you. As I said, I'll be the lead developer on the Ladybug Solar Project. Okay, and as you mentioned, the property is zoned agricultural residential. We're proposing a 4-megawatt project along Sudlersville Road in Clayton. When it's all said and done, the project will be roughly 25 acres, 25 to 30 acres. As it's designed now, it's approximately 27. And as you can see here, these orange rectangles, they represent the solar panels, much like the previous project that we looked at. The project is set back in the rear of the property, almost over 1,500 feet from the roadway. The green lines that you see here in the image to the right represents the screening that we're proposing, the 6-foot evergreen trees. The blue lines that you see here represent the fixed knot agricultural fencing, similar to the images that you saw earlier. And the white hatched area represents our access drive. In the center of the property, we'll have our equipment where we'll post the transformers. As you can see, it's tucked back in the rear of the property, away from any residential buildings. We would estimate, if we get approved through this process here, that we'd start construction in Q1 or Q2 of next year, and have commercial operations complete by the end of the year. And here you can see, similar to the previous project, we had Century complete a wetland study. There is a wetland that's to the east of the property. And as you can see, we will be avoiding it with a 100 feet of setback. There's existing trees that run along to that portion of the property. We'll be maintaining the existing trees throughout, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll be installing vegetative screening along the frontage. This particular project will reduce emissions about 6,221 metric tons of carbon dioxide annually, which is the equivalent of over 1,200 homes. And it sequesters the same amount as would 7,363 acres of U.S. forests. With this project, we will be requesting 2 waivers. The first, the requirement to provide a sidewalk along the arterial roadway frontage of the property. Similar to the previous project, there is no existing sidewalk along Sudlerville Road. It will remain in agricultural use. The project footprint will not increase any foot traffic, or I'm sorry, the project will not increase any foot traffic once it's completed. The second waiver that we are requesting is a requirement to provide 1 tree per 3,000 square feet of site area for non-residential development. The existing trees will not be disturbed by the project. The forested areas that are existing total approximately 35 acres. 200 trees proposed along the landscape buffer, which is approximately 1 tree per 1,311 square feet. We will maintain the balance of the site as agricultural use. And
Excuse me
again,
a minute. Do we have the second request for the waiver to come
I
up?
apologize. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. And again, without this waiver, it would create excessive financial burden, challenging the economics of the project. As Yannick had mentioned with the previous project, these are smaller projects that don't necessarily have the economy of scales that a much larger project could accommodate. So, and again, with this project, we will be submitting a decommissioning plan. At the end of the project life, the project can be returned to farm use. The decommissioning will be paid for by the project, not by the county. And as we discussed earlier, many of the components can be recycled or reused, and there's also a significant salvage value. And again, we will be posting a surety with the county upon getting our decommissioning plan approved.
And once again, this project is being leased and not purchased, correct?
Correct, yes. We are leasing the acreage from the property owner.
Yeah, I just want that on the record.
Yes.
I think Denise has a question for you.
Yes.
He keeps asking my first question beforehand. This is a question I guess I should have thought of months ago. So here's my question. It says conditional use area consists of approximately 24.17 fenced acres. And I don't expect any specifics. I'm just curious, what percentage of, when we see something like what the actual area is, like of the farm, what percentage of that 24 whatever, or of any other one, what percentage is not containing the solar panels? Would you, and again, I'm just asking for an estimate.
Well, it's basically, we have the array, and then we have about a 20-foot access around the array where we fence it so we can get to it and maintain it. So
it's not including the area where any tree plantings would be? Is that outside of that 24 acres or not?
That the trees are outside of that acreage, yes. So,
okay, all right.
Yes.
I guess that's really clear.
We'll have the screening, we'll have the fence, and we'll have the array within the fence. What we were talking about, what we're showing here is we're talking about this the screened-in portion of the facility. I'm sorry, the fenced-in portion of the facility.
The fenced-in portion is the 24.17.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any question for this gentleman? Mr. Gervais?
Yeah, I apologize. I said that I was going to ask my question the last time, and that would be it. But I've just been thinking a little bit more about it. On that artificial lighting, would you guys be opposed if there was just the? I think on the DENREC recommendation, there's a a sentence or so that just says that I can read it, all lighting should be minimum necessity brightness, consistent with operations of safety and security. And then the last sentence, use lights with automatic controls such as timers, photosensors, or motion detectors. So I was thinking in terms of service lighting. I imagine there would be some service lighting there. And I would just like to understand that on service lighting, that those would not be on continuously, that they could be on some sort of sensors or whatever was considered to be a security angle on that. That was just one thought on that one. The fencing on the Denrick thing, it just said that they had recommended 3 or 4 strand smooth fencing, commonly known as deer fencing without barbed wire. And I was also wondering if you're opposed to their language of what they recommended just in terms of the type of fencing. They're not specifying a model or anything like that. They're just indicating what they like in terms of height. I think you said 8 feet.
7 feet.
7 feet. They're recommending 8 to 10, and they want 3 to 4 smooth strand fencing. So I was just wondering if we could be a little bit more specific about the type of fencing, since it seems like we're almost on the same page on that one. And the last thing, this is more of a question for Sarah. I know that traditionally when we're looking at buffers, we're looking at evergreens, arborvitaes and that sort of thing. Having been a beekeeper for a while, I know a lot of my bees used to like a lot of trees, particularly like tulip poplars and black locust. So even though they don't keep their foliage in the winter, I'm wondering if maybe we could intersperse some pollinator-type trees in with the buffer zones and therefore accomplish something in that regard, or some sort of phased. I understand that the ground cover, being able to take roots quickly, is an important component of the project, but this project goes on for 25 years, so it doesn't seem unreasonable that in another phase, a year or 2 or 3 down the road, that some other pollinating type of plants where it could be introduced. So that's just my last thought on it, and then I really will not bring this up on the next one. Thank you.
Do you have an actual question you want answered? Or you went through a lot of different
Well,
things.
I asked if they could be included, if they were opposed to the Denrick wording on the fences, if they were opposed to the Denrick wording on the lighting.
Yeah, I would do one at a time so he could address
yeah,
it.
Okay.
So how do you want him, what are you asking him?
Well, if I could speak to the fencing, we use the fixed knot agricultural fencing on all our projects. Is pretty much standard, the issue that we use. And it's 7 feet. I believe that the electrical code is at 6 feet. So we're exceeding that. And typically we don't modify it. We get a standard fencing system, and we don't typically modify that.
So can a fox, for example, get in and out of that fence?
A fox should be able to. We would think so, yes.
And okay, and the reason why you're using 6 to 7 feet instead of 8 to 10 feet is because it's an industry standard for the electrical use, or it's a wildlife
it's
standard.
based on the electrical standards, yes.
Okay, so Denrick's recommendation has to do with being concerned about wildlife, not necessarily complying with electrical installation standards. And I'm wondering if we can up this to be more compliant with the wildlife concerns versus just going boilerplate with industry standards.
As Yannick touched on in the again, we operate facilities all over the country, and we have not really seen any issues with wildlife or have had any wildlife concerns at any of our facilities. As we touched on, if a deer can get out, essentially a deer should be able to get in. Smaller critters, as we talked about earlier, they seem to get in and out, no problems. We have no issues with animals at any of our facilities all over the country. This is the 7-foot fixed knot agricultural fencing is what we use on our facilities all over, and it just hasn't really been an issue. So yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that the industry standard is 6 to 7 feet, but you were proposing 7.
We are proposing
so that we can then say that we're going to agree at 7?
That's fine, yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't think you would have any problems with if it were determined to be possible to integrate trees that were conducive for pollination in with the buffer zone. Would that be something you would entertain, or without knowing it, I know it's hard to say yes or no to?
It really is. I mean, we don't know. It depends on the availability. I mean, especially with supply chains now. We base the evergreen screening system that we proposed in both this project and American Holly based on the ordinance that was provided by the county. So
okay,
that's where that came
from. All right, thank you.
Any other commissioners, including Mr. Davis? Does anybody have any questions for this individual? I see none. Once again, I thank you for your presentation.
I thank you all.
Is there anyone else here that would like to support this project? Third and final call. Anyone else here that would like to support this project? Going to the against side, is there anyone here that would like to speak that are against this project? And come to the mic, please. Anyone here that would like to speak against this project, come to the mic, please. Come on up to the mic, sir. You've already been sworn in, so just give us your name again. Give us your name. Don't say anything till you get to the mic. Give us your name. Okay, you've already been sworn in.
Yes, the name is Jerome Jennifer at 272 Greenhead Lane. I got kind of there's like multi-projects. This is not one project. So the guy that spoke on the first project is nowhere near my residential. It's the second one, so I got confused on the first project. So I do apologize for that, for your project, but it's the second one. When it came up to Shuttlesville, I said, "Oh no, I'm behind that one." So I do apologize for that one. Okay.
You don't have to apologize. We all get mixed up, all of us up here too. So there's no apology
just
needed.
That one. Okay.
Thank you for straightening it out, though. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Third and final call. Is anyone else here opposed to this project and would like to speak? Sir, you've already been sworn in, so just give us your name and address again so we know who you are at the mic.
Yeah. John Nichols, Clayton, Delaware. Since we're talking about wildlife and the effects on them, let's talk about the smallest wildlife, since I haven't heard about any mitigation efforts put forth by the solar purveyors. But there's multiple studies that indicate various insects are drawn to these solar panels. They mistake them as water, they lay their eggs on it, and the life cycle of some insects, I'm not an entomologist, so forgive me for not telling you exactly what insects, I don't remember. But since wildlife seems to be a concern, we need to focus on the smallest. So I would ask that you ask the purveyors what they're doing to mitigate the lure of the solar panels being mistaken for water, where they lay eggs on it, disrupts the life cycle, and in turn can have adverse deleterious effects on other animals that feed on those small insects. Just another problem with solar panels that I thought I'd bring to your attention, and another reason I oppose them all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Third and final call. Anybody else here oppose this project? Then if not, we'll be taking this project up next week at our business meeting. Project on the agenda tonight is once again for solar. Application and title is CS 22-06, Gray Fox Solar. Applicant is Gray Fox Solar Farm, LLC, care of Yannick Tam, 6940 Columbia Gateway, Suite 400, Columbia, Maryland, 21046. Owner is Marshall and Gail Anthony, 2173 Fox Hunters Road, Harrington, Delaware, 19952. Engineer is Century Engineering Incorporated, care of Alexander E. Schmidt, P.E., 550 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware, 19901. Comprehensive map designation is low density residential. Present zoning map is AR, Agricultural Residential District. Relation to growth zone is outside. Present use is agricultural. Proposed use is same with public utility, solar generating facility. Conditional use area. The conditional use area consists of approximately 21.96 fenced acres, covering an array spanning approximately 7.02 acres. Levy Court District is Mr. Howell VI, School district is Lake Forest. Fire district is Harrington, Station 50. Area and location is 87.65 plus or minus total acres. Conditional use area is 21.96 acres. Located on the northwest side of Brownsville Road, approximately 1,916 feet west of Fox Hunters Road and approximately 9,111 feet east of Redbird Lane, west of Harrington. I know I sound like a broken record, but it has to be read into the record. Thank you, sir. Give us your name and address again so we know who's speaking.
Yannick Tam, 6940 Columbia Gateway Drive, Maryland. All right, thank you again. So now I'll present about the Gray Fox. That's our third and final solar project that EDF is developing in partnership with Delaware Electric. So this is located west of Harrington in the agricultural residential zone. Project overview, similar, the same, megawatt size as the previous projects, 4 megawatts AC, located off of Brownsville Road in Harrington, Delaware. The fenced-in area is approximately 22 acres at this point, and all will also interconnect, similar to the other projects, into Delaware Electric Cooperative's existing distribution system that is along Brownsville Road on the southeast of the site there. And similar to the other projects, the construction schedule is to begin construction Q1 or Q2 of 2023 with the intention of finishing and reaching commercial operation at the end of that year. And similar to the other sites, we're leveraging existing vegetation. This site is particularly well covered with the existing vegetation, as you can see, which I'll talk about a little bit more in some coming slides. Again, Century Engineering did a wetland delineation here. As you can see on the left image, the majority of the woods and shrub are in wetlands around the agricultural field. So yeah, it's a combination of woods and shrub wetlands, which we are not impacting. Again, we are set back 100 feet at least from all of these wetlands. This also has the environmental benefits of the pollution-free electricity that's generated, offsetting almost over 6,000 metric tons of CO2 that would normally have been emitted from traditional generation sources. And that's equivalent to the electricity consumption of approximately 1,200 homes and the amount of carbon sequestered by over 7,000 acres of U.S. forests per year. So for this one, we only have one waiver request, and that's the same requirement to provide 1 tree per 3,000 square feet of area. And the justification there is that, again, we are not proposing to impact any of the wetlands. We're not cutting down any trees. We're developing in the open ag field. And the existing shrub as well as forested wetlands are total 57 acres on the parcel. That we will maintain. Even so, we're proposing to plant 108 trees in the green vegetated buffer up front along Brownsville Road. And I've already touched on the pollution-free solar electric generation, the previous slide, and similar to the other three, this is a distributed scale project that doesn't benefit from the economies of scale as some of the larger solar projects. And we'd like to reduce the amount of shading as much as possible that can arise from tree growth. And then again, similar to the other projects, the project will be decommissioned at the end of its 25 to 35 year lifetime. And that cost again is borne by the project and not the county and not the landowner. And a decommissioning plan and a financial assurance will be provided to the county. And similar to the other projects, this will also enter into a lease agreement with the landowner. Right, and yeah, as mentioned with the earliest project, our existing option to lease agreement does have that decommissioning requirement with the landowner already. So with that, I hand it back to you.
So you come to us with a holly, a ladybug, and a gray fox. I don't know what kind of animals you're coming next time with, but I guess it'll be something different. I think Denise has a question for you.
I have a question that I had answered for me just now, but this way it'll get on the record. And I'm just curious, because I'm originally a Philadelphia girl who was meant to be a farm girl, I think. But anyway, do farmers approach companies like yours, or do you approach companies like them, or they find out about you and then they contact? I'm just curious how it all works. I'm assuming it's an appropriate question, I hope.
We don't have any problem answering that. No, it can work in both directions. Oftentimes, what happens is that we identify a certain area of interest to develop a solar farm based upon the demand, the electricity demand in that area, the capacity on the grid, based upon the solar resource, many different factors. And then we often reach out to landowners in that general area of interest and see if anyone is interested. And if they are not, of course, we won't hear back. And if they are interested, we'll hear back, and then we'll enter into a discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does any other commissioners have any questions for this? Mr. Servon, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about the entrance road. Is that off Brownsville Road?
Correct.
And you don't mind putting in a sidewalk there? You didn't request a waiver for sidewalk?
Yeah, that is not a requirement on this road.
Okay.
Any other people, any other commissioners? Mr. Davis, does he have a question while the gentleman's at the mic? No questions? I once again thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else here would like to speak in favor of this project? Third and final call. Anybody here would like to speak in favor of this project? Going to the against side. Anyone here would like to come to the mic to speak against this project? Once again, sir, I ask you to give your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is John Nichols. I live in Clayton, Delaware. I used to work in the financial services industry, spent 35 years there, had to deal with a lot of lawyers. One of the things that lawyers told me that I have to recognize is what's called a true lie. What it means in legalese is you say something that on the surface is true, but when you look beneath what's being said, it's false. One of the slides that I saw up here, which is why I'm here again, is a true lie. They say that they reduce carbon dioxide emissions during operations. What they don't say, and here's the true lie, is the carbon dioxide that is emitted during the extraction for all the minerals that are necessary in order to manufacture the solar panels. And since I used to follow these things, for 5 years I worked for the Cesar Rodney Institute. My job was to be a contributing policy analyst. I used to read legislation and testify and try to tell people we're going down the wrong path. So I had to learn a lot, but I'm still learning. But the USGA, U.S. Geologic Service, from 2019, Communication and Public Publishing, you should be aware of this because this is a true lie. I swear to tell the truth. They're offering true lies, and I'm saying it to them, with them here. What's in these panels? Arsenic, galenium, germanium, indium, tellurium. Now, I'm not going to tell you how much of that is acquired from communist China, but rest assured it's a lot. And they don't look at the CO2 emissions that's necessary to use the diesel equipment that mines the ore, that uses coal-fired generation to smelt the ore, that transports the ores wherever it has to go to manufacture the final product, all of which should be counted into CO2 emissions. Now, I'm not familiar with this EPA site. I'm only familiar with what the purveyors put up here, which is in operation. So I would ask you, when you're inquiring of them, what is the actual life cycle of CO2 emissions when you take into account all of the necessary mining that has to occur, extraction, smelting, transportation? Is there any real reduction in CO2? So again, I remain opposed to all of them. Thank you very much. If you have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Who you have a question for, Mr. Mills?
Thank you, sir.
Gentleman at the mic.
It'd be the gentleman that just testified, but it would be to comment And I'd like to hear what you just said,
Yes, sir.
rebuttal from these people here.
That would be fine.
I'd like for them to be able to answer what you just,
Are you asking me a question or are you making a statement?
I think he's just making a statement. I think your presentation's done, so we're going to address this through him. Yeah, thank you, sir. We're going to address this another way.
Thank you.
what I'm
Mr.
saying
Tam,
is-
would you like to come up and address that and all? I think we've had that answered a number of times here, how they're sealed and they don't give off anything, but I'd like to hear from the engineer with one of the projects. Please give us your name and address again, and then address what we're questioning.
Yannick Tam, 6940 Columbia Gateway Drive. The whole life cycle analysis is a tremendously complicated thing to fully understand. However, the amount of energy that goes into the extraction and the manufacture of the modules is only about, and the numbers differ, but ranges from 1% to 5% of the total green pollution-free electricity that is produced throughout the lifetime of the whole project. So you have to take into account the whole 25 to 35 years, and then even beyond that too, once the modules are recycled and repurposed in a different use. So you have to look at the whole life cycle of the carbon emissions. And over the whole lifetime, it is producing vastly more green, pollution-free electricity than this small amount of pollution that is from the extraction and the manufacturing process of the actual panels.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Mills? Thank you. We also got one more call. Does anybody like to come to the mic to, okay, Mrs. Nash, come on up. Give us your name and address, please.
Okay. Tricia Hurd Nash, 3652 Big Woods Road, Smyrna, Delaware, 19977. I wanted to just actually address two things. Ms. Kircher's question about how do people contact the solar companies, or how do the solar companies contact the landowners? As a landowner, I can give you that information. We get stacks and stacks and stacks of junk mail flyers in our mailboxes. Then we get letters that look like official contracts in our mailboxes. And then occasionally we get the random person that comes and knocks on the door and tries to push it as it's good for our neighbors and good for us and a way to supplement our income. That's how we find out. And an elderly neighbor that I have actually was badgered to the point that her grandson ran the solar company off of her farm. That's how they come about. I'm sure there are a few people that contact them that are interested in it, but for the majority of us, they come into an area, they look at the land values, they look at your proximity to the power grid, and they go, oh, let's target this area, which is what happened to our AC district on the east side of 13 in Kent County. That's how we get targeted. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, since we keep talking about how good solar is for the environment, is that according to the USDA, 1 acre of corn removes about 8 tons of carbon dioxide from the air in a growing season. At 180 bushels per acre, corn produces enough oxygen to supply a year's needs to 131 people. So for every acre of corn you're taking out of production, you're taking away 8 tons of carbon dioxide. You're adding it to the environment. So when they stand up and they give you all of these numbers, no one talks about what you're doing by removing the agriculture from the area. So I just wanted to bring that up and let you guys, there are people that could talk about this better than I can, but that's just from the USDA, that's what 1 acre of corn does for you in a growing season. And a growing season of corn is May, April, middle of April until this year, second week of September. So you guys need to keep that in mind. When it's all gone and you're looking at solar, are you better off? It's a question.
Thank you very much. That concludes this part of the meeting tonight about Gray Fox Solar Farm. Thank you all for coming. We'll be taking it up next week. Thank you. Going down to the next part of the agenda tonight. Next part of the agenda is actual LC 22-16, community solar definition. An ordinance to amend Kent County Code, Volume 2, Chapter 205, zoning, as amended by revising Article 2, definitions, subsection 205-6, definitions, to delete the reference to regulations by the Public Service Commission in the definition of community energy generating facility and add the maximum size of 50 acres. Sarah, would you like to explain?
Thank you. Currently, as the definition reads, to be considered a community system, it relies on, or it references back, regulation by the Public Service Commission. That effectively eliminates any of the territory run by the co-op, which is why the 3 previous applications had to be reviewed as public utilities rather than able to go through community. So what this does is simply delete the reference to the PSC and instead insert what's already the limit on community, which is the 50 acres. So that pretty much opens up the co-op area to administrative review for community solar. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Any commissioners have any questions about this ordinance?
I do.
Oh, Mr. Garvey, go ahead.
Sarah, can you help me understand where it says which may be located either as a standalone facility or behind the meter of participating owner or customer? What's an example of that?
The projects we just reviewed.
Okay. All right.
You okay with the answer? Yeah. Any other commissioners, including Mr. Davis, who's on the phone? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the ones in the public. Anybody here in favor of this this ordinance? Excuse me, and would like to speak? Anyone here in favor of this ordinance would like to speak? Third and final call. Anyone here in favor of this ordinance would like to speak? On the negative, going to ask, is anyone here opposed to this ordinance would like to speak? Mr. Nichols, once again, give us your name and address.
John Nichols, Clayton, Delaware. Welcome as answers a picnic. But look, I moved to Clayton from Middletown. One of the reasons I moved was to escape Delmarva Power and the high cost of subsidies that were built into my bill. If you happen to be a Delmarva Power ratepayer and you look at the back of the bill and you see all the subsidies for wind and solar, that's on there because of me. I brought that forth as a docket item, along with others, at the PSC, served as an intervener so that you would know how much you're paying to subsidize wind or solar. Most people don't look at it. I don't want to pay to subsidize wind or solar. I don't want any wind or solar. I want to get away from wind or solar. That's why I'm here. By opening up to the co-op, you're opening up the likelihood, it would appear, that I'm going to, in some way, shape, or form, pay for it. And if you'd like, I can give you more information. Who asked the question about, community solar and behind the meter and standalone? If you'd like, I can respond to that. I can tell you how it works. If you prefer it, I won't. But the bottom line is, if it is a behind the meter installation, then the likelihood is at some point I'm going to have to pay for it. And I don't want to pay for it. And you're going to be levying a tax on me if you allow this to happen. And I don't think that's your duty. Beyond that, and I don't mean to insult anyone. I'm certainly not as expert as a degreed engineer, but I have a lot of information. You lack the expertise, I believe, to properly regulate such projects. The PSC needs to be in here in some way, shape, or form. Not that I agree with them. In fact, I disagree with them almost as heartily as I disagree with approval of these projects, maybe more so. But you need to have some additional involvement. So it should continue to be the PSC. And if it somehow deters developers, so be it. But at least there's some other regulatory body that, and the PSC really does have an area of expertise that you lack. It's not your bailiwick. Your job is land use. Their job is regulating public utilities. So I do not oppose this. I think it should stay as it is. I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. If you have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else here opposed to this particular ordinance? Anyone opposed? Third and final call, anyone opposed? If not, then we'll be taking this ordinance up next week at our business meeting. Last on our agenda tonight is LC 22-12, Solar Facilities. An ordinance to amend Kent County Code, Volume 2, Chapter 205, zoning as amended by revising Article 5, Agricultural Conservation District, subsection 205-48, conditional uses. Article 6, Agricultural Residential District, subsection 205-64, conditional uses. Article 21, conditional uses, subsection 205-363.1. Utility solar facility, Article 21, conditional uses, subsection 205-365. Table of conditional uses in Article 26A, supplementary regulations, subsection 205-397.9, community energy generating facilities. In order to eliminate utility solar facility as a conditional use in the agricultural conservation and agricultural residential zoning district, establish a limit of one community energy generating facility per parcel, and establish an expiration date for approved community energy generating facility projects. Once again, Sarah, I'll come to you.
Thank you. This ordinance is an amendment to the Solar Facilities Ordinance Levy Court adopted in March. In brief, effectively it eliminates utility solar as a use, whether permitted or conditional, except in the BG zoning district. So in short, utility solar would only be permitted as a conditional use in the BG, the general business zoning district. It would no longer be permitted in the AC or AR zoning districts, either inside or outside the growth zone. It also, there had been concern expressed after the adoption of the previous ordinance that community solar, effectively a large parcel could be subdivided and then developed with numerous community systems, ultimately looking like a utility system. So what this says, it mimics the language we use for minor subdivisions, that on the day it's adopted, all time stops, and every original parcel, for the purposes of developing community solar, the parcels as they exist on the day it's adopted is where they would be permitted, one per parcel. Currently, there is a limit in the ordinance within the AC zoning district of 800 acres of community. What this ordinance does is combine the AR and the AC. Previously, or right now, AR is not impacted by that limit. Both zoning districts would be impacted by the limit. So the proposal is the limit be increased to 1,600 acres rather than 800, because you're taking in a lot more land area if you include AR. And then finally, for most site plans, or for all site plans and subdivision, the county has established sort of dates by which development has to actually occur. The idea behind that is ordinances change over time. We want to make sure something doesn't sit for a long time and then is able to be developed under old regulations. So what this does is, for community solar, provide an expiration of 2 years. And then, similar to how we treat subdivision, after the 2 years, if it hasn't been constructed, then they can come back for review by the staff. And if it meets whatever the current requirements are, they can get reapproved administratively. If it doesn't meet current requirements, then they would have to go through the process again. So in short, that's what this ordinance does. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Understood. I will open it up to the commissioners now. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I always have.
Hervey, go ahead.
So, Sarah, if I understand correctly, the combined ACAR zoning at 1,600 acres, at 50 acres a pop, so 32 facilities at 50 acres a pop, equals the 1,600 acres could go into the ACAR, and there is no delineation between which one gets, it's whoever gets there first.
It's
So all
absolutely.
16 acres could be an AC, theoretically.
Theoretically.
Okay.
Any other commissioners, including Mr. Davis on the phone, have any questions? No questions? Then I'll open it up to the public. Anybody here would like to speak in favor of this project, of this ordinance, excuse me, I keep calling them projects, my fault. Mrs. Nash, please come up and once again give us your name and address.
Hi, Tricia Hurd Nash, 3652 Big Woods Road, Smyrna, Delaware, 19977. I've worked with the staff and with the levy court commissioners a lot on this ordinance. The ordinance is not perfect, as I'm sure Mr. Nichols will point out for us. It's not, but it is.
This to you.
It is.
Yeah, there you go. That's better.
Is that good? It's not perfect, and I'm sure Mr. Nichols can point out all the reasons that it's not. And I don't disagree with him. I just want you to know that we couldn't create the perfect beast here. There is no perfect. There has to be compromise. So what we've tried to do is everyone at the table has tried to compromise and come up with something that kept the ag conservation district and the ag residential districts protected within Kent County, kept the character of Kent County intact, while allowing people supplemental income off of community solar if they so chose to go that route, but with their neighbors being able to feel comfort in that their entire area wasn't going to turn into a utility scale solar complex, which, as you all know, happened near us, and there was a lawsuit pending about that one project. That's what we're trying to stop from happening. I feel like everybody did their part. I feel like they got input from the farmers, they got input from the landowners, we had input from the community solar groups. I think the utility solar people sort of have bowed out of some of our talks. I don't know, Sarah can attest to that better than I can, but I think we've done a good job. Can it be tweaked? Can there be changes in the future? Will there be things that come up? I'm sure that there will. I mean, I would like to see it stay at 800 acres for AC and AR, but I understand that that's not reasonable. So I'm not going to stand here and ask you for that. But I think this is a good document. I think it's well written. I think it offers protection to Kent County, and it preserves the character of Kent County, and it helps to preserve the agricultural community in Kent County, which I think is vital to the state of Delaware. And I think it needs to be adopted. And I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has any. Or
Any commissioner have a question for this young lady? Mr. Gervais?
I just have one question. You seem to have your finger on the pulse of what the ag community supports and doesn't support for the limited amount of time that I've known you and that I've been on this panel. So my question is it your opinion that the majority of the farming community supports this?
Yes, it's my opinion that in the Ag Conservation District, you will see very little solar. That's my opinion, within the Ag Conservation District on the east side of Route 9, or on the east side of Route 1, that area, which was being heavily targeted by the solar companies. You have Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge, you have the Woodland Beach Wildlife Refuge area, you have the Scenic Byway, Delaware Scenic Byway, in that area, and it was like we were being inundated at this time last year, and it caught everyone off guard. There are so many restrictions in that ag conservation area for us, even as landowners, that we've had to accept. You know, you can't build houses. You're not going to get overdevelopment in that area. You can't have a business. There's so many restrictions that this caught everyone off guard because everyone's general consensus was this can't happen out here. They're going to have to go someplace else. And then we found out really quickly that it could happen. And that's how all of this started, as you guys know. And I've been here, and I've met with, the people in our area, basically, I've met with all of them at some point in time in the last year, and I've been honest. I personally don't want to look at solar. I don't live there so that I see solar. I go to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park on my vacations to hike. I don't want to see that, but that's just my opinion. I'm not opposed to green energy. I don't want to see it. I have neighbors that have come to me and said, hey, hey, you know what, I'm not for this and I don't want a great big complex, but if we ever got in trouble, the supplemental income may be a positive benefit off of a small parcel that's kind of hidden at the back of the property. That's what I'm hearing from landowners in our area. But what has got everybody alarmed and upset is the way that they came in and targeted our area. And it's because the county, back in the 90s, came in and made it an ag conservation district, which limited what you could do with your land, which drove land values down. Then we're close to the power grid. We're in close proximity to the power grid. You've got cheap land prices, nice flat land that's already cleared, and you're close to the power grid. We're an easy, quick, clean target for the power companies that have more money than any farmer can ever spend to keep farming. So we need this protection in place, and I feel confident standing here saying that I do represent my neighbors. I have spoken to all of them. And I'm being honest when I say some of them do want the option of small supplemental income if they need it at some point. I haven't heard anyone say, yeah, I'm going to do that. No one in my area is planning on doing it. But I did hear those comments. And in that, I was honest and sat down at the table with Commissioner Maston and Commissioner Angel and Commissioner Buxton and Sarah, and we represented that. I feel like this is a good document that represents everyone in those areas. But I also feel that Kent County needs something. You guys, I mean, tonight's meeting, do you ever remember a time where everything on your agenda was about solar? This is just not going to stop in Kent County unless we put limits in place. And people like me don't want to be here every other meeting, and I don't want to have to look at the agendas for levy court to see if I need to show up or if there's something going on. And I mean, I got phone calls today about one of the issues you didn't hear tonight. I started getting phone calls today saying, hey, what do you know about this project? And then I came in and found out that you guys took it off the docket. But I mean, people are upset about these things. I was sitting in the back and the lady that spoke earlier came up and said, could I speak to you in the hallway for a moment? I think Mr. Jester knows who she is. I don't really have her name. And I went out in the hallway and I said, how can I help you? And she said, I wasn't notified about this project until she received one letter last week, made a phone call, and then she received another letter on Monday. And she said some of her neighbors have not been notified. There are problems in this system. And I did tell her to please come in and talk to the county about that. But there are problems in this system. People are worried about this, and we need Kent County Levy Court to get on top of this and to put some protection in place for the residents of the county. So that's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions, including Mr. Davis? Okay, thank you once again, Mrs. Nash. Appreciate your comment. I think Denise has a question for staff before we go forth.
Nothing that is in this ordinance, am I correct, has any impact, or tell me what impact it has on the farmer, on the business owner who wants to put in a personal, several acre solar farm?
To serve their own property?
Yes.
Oh, no, this wouldn't impact that at all. If you're putting solar on your property to serve whatever you're doing on your property, no, that's accessory to your use. That's completely separate from
even
this.
if it involves not something on your roof, but a little mini
No, we've
solar
had
farm.
people put panels on the ground.
I know there's one I
So, no,
passed,
we
yeah.
treat those as accessory uses.
Okay, thank you.
I'm still in the 4. Is there someone else here who'd like to speak in favor of this particular ordinance? Please give us your name and address, and you can be sworn or affirmed.
Paul Cartanza, Senior, 6289 Bayside Drive, Dover.
Mr. Cartanza, do you swear or affirm, sir, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm for the ordinance, but I do have some questions, and I think that needs to be tweaked. As Mr. Garvey said a minute ago, can all 1,600 acres go in AC or AR? Well, I really think we're going to have a problem with that. I think that it needs to be 800 in one and 800 in the other, because I think we're going to get overloaded on one side. So these are the things that we need to look at and try to decipher how we can generally give everybody a piece of the pie instead of it being on one side. Solar, I agree with the solar in certain ways and wind, but there again, I'm just going to make my comment. It shouldn't be in our agricultural area. We farmed there. I've been a second generation farmer. We farmed at one time 10,000 acres. Well, I could take you around and show you half the 10,000 acres now are housing, development. I mean, we're just being inundated by that structures too. And it's a good, easy money. I mean, you know, some people making $50,000, $100,000 an acre. You can't make that farming all the time. It's difficult. You got Mother Nature right now as dry as the Sahara Desert. I seen cactus going up the highway because he said, I can't live here because there's not enough water. So he was hiking up the road. But, you know, it's just, there's certain things that we really need to make sure that we try to encompass everything that we're trying to acquire. And sometimes it's difficult. But to me, that's one thing that I think that we should look at in this agreement, tweak it a little bit more. So, any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Cartanza? Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Cartanza. Appreciate it. I think Denise has a
I
comment.
just wanted to say that I've been on the commission for 21 years. And yes, what you were saying about the subdivisions. If you go 18 years ago, everything on our, that we would be seeing tonight would all be 250 unit subdivisions. So it's like, it's almost as if one of my mantras is this too shall pass. So we got through the subdivision thing, now we're going through the solar thing, well, and then the next question always in my mind is, what's it gonna be next? and I think, yeah, I agree with what Mrs. Nash said, is that it's compromise that occurred, and that's what everything's gotta be.
I mean, that's what we've
It's gotta be.
That's what we've tried to do, trying to get rid of the commercial side of it and allow some smaller stuff to come in, because you can't choke everybody, but the commercial is just too much. Just too much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments.
Sarah, I have a question.
Do you have a question for staff?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What was the, so the 1,600 divided between AC and AR, why was that determined, or is there any wiggle room in that? I mean, at some point, for it to be all one or the other, some faction had to push for that, and I'm just wondering what that faction was. Why are we talking about that, which seems a little bit sideways even to the people in the room, but they seem to be okay going along with it, and I'll go along with it too if I can be given an explanation as to why I'm going along with it.
Because when the original ordinance was adopted, the primary concern had to do with the AC zoning district, so a limit was established only for AC. There was no limit for AR at all.
But that was 800 acres total.
In AC.
In AC. But
And
now
as
we've
many as you wanted in AR. There was no limit in the AR zoning district at all. There is not today a limit within the AR zoning district.
So who representing AR was insistent then on this? Because people
No,
at the
it
AC
was-
wouldn't have been.
The goal with the amendment was to effectively impose a limit, primarily countywide, because most of the county is either AC or AR. And because the interest was in imposing a limit across both of those zoning districts, the proposal by the levy court was to increase it to 1,600 acres rather than 800. And then they can review going forward as properties develop. But I think it's important to keep in mind, today there is no limit on AR at all.
I don't disagree that there should be a limit. I'm just curious as to why it's so open-ended one way or the other. And I'm just wondering if, so we don't have the authority though to indicate that we would want, we do. We could say that we wanted 800.
Make recommendations or suggestions, and I think Denise has something she wants to say about it.
I would
Sorry.
make a recommendation that since it was the 800 was for the AC originally, why doesn't this say a maximum of 1,600 with no more than 800 in AC? To me, that takes care of this, of the issue.
Nothing prohibits the Planning Commission from putting forward a proposed amendment to the levy court.
I would be happy to propose that.
We can do that at any time, that's correct. I would like to ask something of staff, though. Is it possible that you could come up and tell us presently how many acres there are in AC and how many acres there are in AR, and have it to us by next week? So we're now looking at, we've already passed a few, but we have these that's in the queue to be coming forth. I'd like to have some kind of a something to go by, like a benchmark, that we know where we're at and where we're going to go to. So can that be prepared by staff?
Easily.
Very good. I look forward for that information. I think it'd be very helpful. Okay, now going to the against side. We've already asked about the for side. Going to the against side for this particular ordinance. Mr. Nichols, come up again, once again, and give us your name and address and tell us why you're against these particular ordinance measures.
Well, I'm both for and against it, but I didn't think you want me up here twice, so I just came up here to be against it. The reason I'm for it...
Give us your name and address.
I'm sorry, John Nichols, Clayton, Delaware. The reason I'm for it is to...
No, we're not into for.
I understand.
We're in the against.
But I didn't know how to respond both times. I could either come up here twice or speak once.
Okay.
So I decided you wouldn't want to hear me twice. So
I know I'm confused too. I get confused myself.
Once was enough. I support Mrs. Nash. I support agricultural interests. Today is September 1st. It's opening day of dove season. I did not dove hunt. I'm 67 years old. I probably missed 2 openers in my entire life. I'm not there because I'm here. I didn't want to show up in camo. Although I thought about it. I thought, well, I'll come here in camo to prove that I'm an outdoorsman and a conservationist. But I thought, no, you might think I'm some wacko, and I'm not. I'm just a hunter. So I love the natural environment, and I appreciate the agricultural interests and how much they contribute to the economy. So I want to support Mrs. Nash, Mr. Cartans, and all the other farmers in Delaware. However, here's the but. I heard we're going to give up 800 acres in order to get some protection. And okay, and when I spoke of that, on that issue, I said, okay, I'll support you and we'll sacrifice the 800 acres. Here we are again, and now it's 1,600 acres. And I understand it was unlimited in the AR and just limited in the AC, and we had to provide a measure of protection to both. My concern is that, there's 2 concerns. One is this is not going to end. Delaware's going to continue to expand the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards Act. They're going to continue to demand more and more low-density energy projects. They're going to be, and special interests are going to approach you and administration in order to change the ordinance. They're just going to do it. There's too much money involved. These projects generate double-digit returns. Again, not because the wind blows or the sun shines, but because of the subsidies. And Delaware's making the subsidies rich along with all the money the federal government's showering on these special interests. It's not in the interest of citizens because it's a low energy density, but it's going to happen unless you say no. You are the last bulwark between the landowners and foolish energy policies. I have spoken to members of the General Assembly for over a decade. I said earlier, I spoke to PSC members. I've testified before the PSC. I've been an intervener before the PSC. I was a policy analyst, to deaf ears. And it all gets down to this carbon dioxide myth that CO2 is somehow a pollutant. So I'm here to say, yes, I support it, but you need to educate yourselves. When we burn fossil fuels, all we're doing is releasing accumulated carbon dioxide that with millions and hundreds of millions of years ago was captured by the very plants that Mrs. Nash spoke of. Life exploded on Earth at a time when CO2 levels were far higher than the 480 parts per million than they are today. There were 4,000 parts per million, perhaps even higher. And they measure that by what's called proxy data. I hang around with a lot of scientists. So I look at that and I say, where is CO2 a pollutant? When I was a kid, crop yields were 150 bushels an acre. I used to think I wanted to be a farmer. I value them and I appreciate their lifestyle, but I said, I can't handle the risk. I'm not that risky. I can't do it. It's a high-risk, low-return operation. You do it for love as well as income. So 150 bushels. And now I was talking to Mrs. Nash's son, and I said, so what are you getting, 108? This is how ancient I am. What are you getting, 180 bushels an acre now? He said over 300, in a good year with irrigation, over 300 bushels an acre. Corn.
Well, I'm not
Why am I
going
telling you this? I'm telling you this because you're making public policy.
Well, I've been a farmer too.
So
Mr.
you would know
Cartanza
everything
knows
I'm
me.
telling you.
And if we used to get 100 bushel an acre, we was happy.
You're
I got
older
news
than
for
I.
you. But nowadays we are. So on these 4 provisions,
Right.
are you for all 4 or against all 4 of them? That's what you're up to the mic to
I
tell
understand.
me. Are you against those 4?
My reservation goes back. I spoke to Mrs. Maston. She's my commissioner.
Okay, but I just asked you a question.
I know.
Are you for these 4 revisions? Evidently, you're at the mic to be against them. Is that what
understand.
you're saying?
I'm for them with reservations. And I didn't want to be here twice.
Okay, thank you very much for your position.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else here opposed to this particular ordinance, 4 points of ordinances? If not, we'll be taking this up next week at our business meeting. Thank you all for attending. I'm now down to public comment. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Some in the audience haven't been to the mic at all. Would you have anything you'd like to say? We certainly appreciate you attending tonight. Thank you very much. Now I've got down to commissioner comments. Any commissioners have any comments? Mr. Davis, does he have anything to say, Mark?
Commissioner Davis, you might want to unmute your mic.
About now, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, Mr. Chairman, I thought it was an interesting meeting, and I look forward to see the vote next week. I just like to say I would have been there this evening, but my wife's been very ill, and there's a possibility even next week I may not be there. So I'm sorry I missed the meeting. I thought it was a very productive meeting, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your comments, and of course, our prayers are with you and your family. Thank you very much. Any other business to bring before commission tonight? Mr. Servon, you have something?
Yes, I just have a question for the staff about the items for the ordinance. Is it going to be an all or nothing vote? I mean, can we get them separated by?
You can, the ordinance is what it is. You can suggest amendments to the ordinance. Ultimately, it's levy court's decision, it's legislation. I would, and clearly we'll put together an amendment for your consideration, separating out the AC and the AR limits. If someone is interested in different amendments, I would encourage you to send me an email. I'll be working on this stuff tomorrow. But yeah, you can't just automatically pull stuff out. It's got to be a constructed amendment for levy court to consider.
I thank you very much, Sarah. And once again, I thank you and staff because I know you're the point of contact bringing it forth to us. And you have to sit back and have no opinion. And I think you do a great job what you do. Thank you very much. Saying all that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Call the commission.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes, to adjourn.
Mr. Servon?
Yes, to adjourn.
Mrs. Karcher?
Yes.
Mr. Galvery?
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes, and thank you all for attending.